Servus and welcome to another episode of the Pro Hockey Pod, episode 58. This week, special guest on my boss. So a lot to thank to this guy for obviously giving me the job here in Mannheim. It's been great so far going into year two. But this is all about this guy's playing career. Longtime DL goalie like myself. We have that goalie connection. Probably one of the only people who has more rings than Michael Jordan titles. So welcome to the Pro Hockey Pod, Youri Ziffzer.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Not a bad intro, eh? More rings than Jordan. That's a good start. Um, so you have kind of an interesting background, I would say. Not many people who come to Germany and get into hockey were born in Singapore. So explain the reasoning for being born there, a German like yourself.
Well, obviously, my parents lived there at the time I was born. Um, no, actually, my dad worked for a German bank, and he was before he spent 4 years in Singapore. He spent together with my mother. They spent 3 years in New York, and then they went to Singapore for 4 years. So my sister was born in Singapore 3 years earlier than I was born. So, but I was there for 6 months. So August 21st, I was born, and I guess it was February 13th on a Friday. So Friday the 13th, I guess my family decided to go back home. So I have it in my passport, but that's about it, I have to say.
Don't remember much about being there. Like why? So when your parents decided to, or your family decided to move back to Germany, like was the reason just because of work, or they miss being at home?
No, it was work related from my dad's side. Um, he was since he was working in a bank, and they were working together with different companies, where they when the companies come to the bank and needed money, and so he was kind of looking after that. The numbers there at the bank. So at some point, one company said, "Hey, you work for the bank and look after the numbers there." And I guess they thought he did a pretty good job, so they offered him a job, and then he decided to go back home.
It's always good to come back home. I like asking German guys this question because obviously when you think of Germany, I don't think hockey is the first sport that comes to mind. It's obviously football or soccer, as we say in North America. But what kind of drew you to the sport of hockey?
So I have to say my family got into hockey because of me. There was no connection to hockey at all. At least I can't remember any connection. And the thing was that when I was born, not when I was born, but at my early years, usually when you walk, your feet and your toes face kind of straight forward, right? And my feet were a little bit turned to the inside. So the doctor said it's because of the hip muscles that were not strong enough. And he said skating would be a good thing to train those muscles. So that's the reason my parents looked for a hockey team or looked for a hockey rink where I could go on the ice and skate. So otherwise, I don't think I would ever have
Mm.
come to hockey in some kind of way because it wasn't that popular in the little, it's almost a village I grew up, and the hockey rink was um 20 minutes away, which is maybe in North America it's a normal number, but I think in Germany um you probably pick a sport which is available in your village. So it would be soccer or tennis or somebody else, or whatever somebody else does from your class in school, whatsoever. And so I don't think I would have gotten into hockey without that. So luckily enough, the doctor suggested that, and then yeah, that was the start of everything, I guess.
Little did the doctor know, you just started you on a path to many years of playing hockey. I mean, that's pretty cool though. I obviously didn't know that, and it's good that a sport like that can help out with something like that. Because like you said, I think if you hadn't been born that way with your feet being inwards, you probably would have got into football like every other German, and you never know if he would have ever stepped on the ice. Um, one question I also like asking fellow goalies is like what drew you to the position of being a goalie? I always bring up for me, I just was so fascinated with the goalies and their mask designs. And my parents kept telling me, no, you can't play goalie until you're 10, until you're 10. And then when I turned 10, it was what I asked for my birthday. And that kind of set my path in motion. But what about yourself?
Well, when I started, and I think at the first year of being in a team, because when I started skating, um, it was more fun in games. That's how it was called, actually. Spiel und Spaß in German, um, where you had three different groups on the ice. So the beginners, and then like the advanced, and then
Mm-hmm.
kind of the pros of the 5 year olds. Um, so you go through those three stages, and I went there, but I never had the chance to watch hockey on TV because that was back in 1993, 94. Um, there was no hockey on TV in Germany, or hardly any hockey, and so at least I didn't know where to watch hockey. And since my family wasn't into hockey at that time, really, we didn't have hockey at home or on TV, so I was just skating on the ice. And then at some point, one of the coaches came to me and asked, "Hey, you want to come to the practice of the youngest team we have?" And I said yes, but I didn't know what it really meant. So it was um, kind of coincident. If I would have said no, I guess I wouldn't have gone there. But I guess I skated pretty good, or good enough that he asked me to check it out. So, and then I was a hockey player, and I started first as a player. Um, but still, I played the sport once or twice a week for 50 minutes at that time, and then I went home and did other stuff. So I didn't watch hockey there, so I wasn't really able to be fascinated from hockey goalies because I wasn't able to watch them. On the other side, when I played soccer with friends, I think I went into the net more often. Um, so somehow I had it in me, but the way I got into the hockey goal was that at the team I played for, we only had one goalie who was the goalie all the time, and then the second goalie was always another player for 2 weeks. So we kind of rotated. So at some point it was my turn. So I went into the net there for 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks I was happy I was out. I hated it. And then it was my next turn, and then and the weeks and the weeks before that I guess I was always telling my mom, oh, that goalie thing comes up again in a couple of weeks. I don't really want to have it. And but she said, hey, if you're on a team, everybody has to do it, so you have to do it. And then the second time, after the first week, the coach came up to me and said, hey, you want to stay in net? And I thought he's asking if I want to stay in net for the second week. So I said, yes, I might as well do it. No? But it was only like 3, 4 days later that I figured out that the coach asked me to stay in net until the end of the season. So there I was. It was another kind of coincidence, kind of, that I stayed in net for the rest of the season. And then during that season, I had so much fun, and I kind of was, I guess, a little bit uh, good in it too. So there it was then no question anymore. Then after this season, he asked me if I want to stay in net. I would be the regular goalie, and I said yes, I will do that now. So it's really it's the way I got into skating and the way I got into the net was nothing I really picked for myself. It was more somehow I got in there.
It's always fascinating hearing those stories. Like myself, I remember I was so obsessed with the position just for the goalie mask, but I also like the first couple times I played, I think the first game I let in 15 goals, and like my parents are like, "You're such a better like player. Like, why do you want to be a goalie so bad?" And I was just so determined to do it. It sounds like you kind of had a similar upbringing there at the start, not really liking it, and then in the end, you end up being a full-time guy, which is crazy, but kind of led you to where you went in your career. Back then too, another cool question. Like obviously myself growing up in North America, like with within 10, 15 minutes of everywhere in the greater Toronto area, there's a goalie coach. There's goalie schools. When you were growing up, like, did you attend any kind of whether it's schooling or anything to kind of get like whether it was the basics down in terms of goaltending, or did you have a goalie coach that came maybe in minor hockey like once a week, or a parent that helped you?
Well, at the start, I was only the head coach of the team, and maybe a second coach, but I can't really remember if that was a full-time coach, and I don't think so, or if it was some other parent who kind of helped out on the ice to push the players around if they didn't skate on their own, kind of. But for goalie coaches, at that time there were no goalie coaches in Germany, at least not in junior hockey. So I went to some hockey camps in Czechia. Um, it was the Pro Hockey Academy, Marienbad, Czechia. That's close to the German border. And I remember Jiří Králek, who's a former world-class goalie from Czechia, came to the camp, and that was, at least I remember, the first goalie coach I had, or the first real goalie who taught me something on the position. Um, and then I think the next guy, sometimes actually I played for EHC Klostersee is the name of the team of the club. And they have their first team. They played in I think that time they played in the second German league. Now then the fourth league. But sometimes the second goalie from the first team, that was usually a younger goalie who was always still available to play the under-20 team. They joined our practices to show us something and to be on the ice with the little kids. So that was at the beginning. That's funny too, because that was Michael Wieser, who played there. And Michael Wieser, now I have to laugh because now at some point he studied and he became a doctor. And then when I came back here 10 years ago to Mannheim, I didn't know. But then 4 or 5 years later, somebody told me that at some hospital here where some players have to go when they get surgery on their wrist.
Yeah.
That they get treated so well because there's a former hockey player, a doctor there, and his name is Michi. And I never really thought about it. And then somebody said, it's Michael Wieser. He played in Klostersee too. And I said, really? So, and now he's a doctor for us as well. So that's actually fun. So he was maybe the first goalie coach I had, if you can say it that way. But actually the first guy who came on a regular basis was when Robert Müller joined Klostersee. Came from Rosenheim, which is 30 minutes away, as a 17-year-old, and was number one goalie for our first team. That was the third league, I think. Third or second league, I can't remember. But he was done with school, so he enjoyed being at the rink. So he came on the ice with us. So he taught us some things. Then sometimes he went on the ice with the under-20 team as a player, and he even played games as a player in the under-20 league. And then he played as a goalie for our first team. So obviously, yeah. So that was my first goalie coach, and then obviously my first real role model I had, and knowing before that I kind of got in touch with the NHL via the player cards. Yeah, they were available in Germany at the time, and then there I was fascinated from the goalie mask and the pictures they had. So I remember one player card from Olaf Kolzig who was eating like a sausage on the bench. So they had, with the mustard, they had Olaf written on the sausage. There was one picture, and then there was Mike Richter. I loved the mask with the Statue of Liberty and the colors with the New York Rangers colors. So I became a fan of him and of the Rangers. And so at the moment, I'm happy that the team colors here are the same as my favorite colors. So it kind of fits somehow. But thinking back of goalie coaches, Robert Müller was the first guy. And then it started. And when I later on, when I joined the junior program here in Mannheim, of course, we had Helmut de Raaf as the head coach. He is a German goalie legend. It was great to have him as a head coach and a goalie coach. And then 2 years later, I think my last junior year, Anders Olsson joined us, who is a former goalie from Sweden. He was a great influence, and then of course from that part on, there was always a goalie coach.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's hilarious that our one of our doctors now is somebody, Dr. Ziffzer there, that you obviously remember. That's a funny connection. Thinking of Olaf Kolzig, like I loved his mask because he was like one of the first people that had that like gold cage playing in Washington, and it was just sick. And then he had the dragon design, kind of like the Godzilla there, obviously, which was pretty cool to see as a kid. I remember growing up, and their colors back then were cool. I really liked when they were like the black, blue, and
Mm-hmm.
goldish when they had the old jerseys there. I liked, though. I hope they go back. But you brought up kind of the young Adler there. Um, when did you transition from closer C to the young Adler? And another question I had was the young Adler has developed themselves, I would say, as one of the premier minor hockey organizations in Germany. Like when you were coming through the system, was that something that was just happening, or had they already kind of gained that recognition when you were playing there as well?
Well, I joined the Young Adler in August of 2001, and was basically 3 weeks before I turned 15. Um, so yeah, there you have your answer. So I was almost 15 when I joined them. And at that time, 2001, I think the Young Adler were founded in 1999. So the first year, or maybe even the second year, the Young Adler Mannheim played in the third division of Germany. Um, and they played close to Zebre at the time too. So I was able to watch them twice. I think it was already that you had 4 games against each other, which was cool to see because at that point I was kind of dreaming about becoming a pro hockey player. It was cool to see all the young guys playing in the in the men's league. So and then I just can't remember if they only played 1 year or 2 years, but the year before I joined the Young Adler, it was the first year of the German Junior League, the DNL, which we still have. So I know that I joined the Young Adler for the second DNL year. So it was they just got started basically. So there was um, nothing they really achieved up until that point. But it was obvious, or at that time, at least for me, it was the place to be as a hockey player because you had the school, you had the boarding school, you had the ice times, and what I liked was when Helmut de Raaf came home, um, came to our house and explained everything to my parents and to my sister and to myself. Um, like I knew before, but he always mentioned, of course, that the schedule looks like at least 3 times a week you're on the ice before you go to school, and then the afternoon on the ice again. And then at the time, I just loved being on the ice. So I said, yeah, for me that was the selling point. There was nothing. Of course, I nobody knew what we all achieve from there, but the idea from Jungadler always was to develop players for the German hockey. Because of course, one of the questions my dad had was, "Hey, um, you you want to develop all those players, but you can't really have everybody on the Adler team, right?" Then Helmut answered, "Yeah, we know that, but that's not our goal. We want to develop young players for for Germany." And that's still the case up until today. Um, but you, you could already tell the passion and the determination the organization has. Um, yeah, and it was for me at that point it was perfect. You had a head coach, you had assistant coach, you already had a skills coach, we had a fitness coach. Um, we went even the first year with guys born 84, 85, 86. That was my first year, and the younger guys, so the 86 born. Since of course the younger guys don't have as much ice time as the older guys during the league games. Um, Once a week, usually on a Wednesday, we jumped on the bus and went to Switzerland and played a game there against Swiss team, so that all the young guys get more ice time and get into playing mode. Of course, we had 9 or 10 guys born '86, so 2 lines, so it was enough ice for everybody. That was fun to have too. So yeah, of course they haven't really had any rep reputation
Mm-hmm.
of being such a good development standpoint, but look standpoint location. But at the moment, it was the place where you had the best chances to develop into a pro hockey player.
No, and as you mentioned, like they've obviously since then, developed quite a reputation and arguably probably the one of the best, if not the best, in Germany when it comes to developing and sending guys on to further levels, whether
I
that's
guess you can say it's by far the best.
yeah, like that's
When you look at the numbers, they speak for themselves. And even this summer, we had a 25 years anniversary,
mm,
and of course Leon Draisaitl wasn't there. He was still busy playing hockey for some
some weird
so
trophy.
there's some trophy there, um, but all the other guys, I mean, we had Moritz Seider, Tim Stützle, Dominik Kahun, Marc Michaelis. Um, mm, of course, Seider and Stützle, they're already superstars, but Michaelis and Kahun, they haven't played that many years in North America, but they are on international top level.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many other guys. And Dennis Seidenberg, who won the Stanley Cup, he played for the Young Adler as well. He was the first guy. But it's when you go through the names, it's amazing what those guys, where they played, what they achieved. A lot of silver medals from Olympic Games, uh, from the World Championships now. It's yeah, you can say it's by far the best development program we have in Germany. Maybe even in the I don't know top 10, top 5 in probably in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, the only other one that would come to me in Europe that I can think of, and it's just more based on recency bias, is obviously the academy at Red Bull Salzburg would come to mind of like a place that's like been developing. Obviously, I think the young Adler tradition is a little older than that, and but I just feel like it's also like trying to become something like that where they develop a lot of guys as well. Obviously, that's in Austria there, but one thing I'm curious to you about too is like I always like to ask, especially the European guests, like, was there ever any thought in your head or interest of going overseas and maybe pursuing whether it was major junior in the OHL, for example, or NCAA? I know that route has become, I'd say, more known or popular now. Like you mentioned, Michaelis, he went and played. Kalba, who's on our team now, played there as well,
Mhm.
NCAA. But like when you were growing up, was there any thoughts of that, or was it strictly to stay over here and try to get to, the DL or pro as fast as you could?
No, the thought process was there when I played my final year for the Young Adler when I was 17. So I knew I was I'm too old then to stay with the Young Adler. So it was either turn pro in Germany or do some other junior league somewhere else. So that was so I flew to Malmö, I flew to Gothenburg to check out options there for the under 20 teams. Um, but then somehow I think Gothenburg said no, and for Malmö, I guess I said no. I wasn't, I didn't feel ready enough to make that step. And one other thing was what was close, but at the end I said no because again, for myself I wasn't matured enough, and I kind of feared to make. I was afraid to make the step, which I. That's the only thing I would do different nowadays, I guess. But by that time, in the Quebec Major League, the Loose Maniacs wanted to pick me up, and uh, they wanted to have me, and so but I said no. So obviously they didn't pick me in the draft. Um, and then I decided to go and turn pro in Berlin, but I don't know what would have happened if I would have made that step. But interesting enough, I guess the goalie they picked instead of me was I think it was Andre Pavlic, who went on to have a pretty good career. So sometimes I think not because I think that I would have had the same career, but that's the only question I have in my head. What if would have done that step out on the other side? I turned pro in Germany. Career here was pretty solid as well, and now um, I have a interesting and fun job here in Mannheim. So I would be somewhere else now if I would have made that step.
Yeah.
So, but yet that thought process was there. And one other thing, it wasn't that common at that time that a German player goes and plays overseas. Um, so at some point, somebody told me that who at that time worked for the federation, but he's gone long now. He kind of told me, hey, you know what? When you play overseas, the federation cannot pick you for the under 20 World Championship because we don't see you. And at that year, the World Championship, they were in North Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
So, and somehow that, I think that played a role too in my mind because I really wanted to go to the World Juniors. I guess nowadays, the federation says, hey, yeah, go over there, play, do it, and we send you the plane ticket that you can come play for us at the World Juniors. So they're happy. So that's luckily the times changed. But yeah, that time was different. But at least I played the World Juniors then, and which was a great experience.
What was your hesitation to not go?
Somehow I know I think I just wasn't ready as a person to make this step and be more be further away than I already been in Mannheim, from my parents, from my home, from friends, from coaches, from the language barrier. I guess I was already pretty okay in English, but I know somehow I didn't.
No, it like I was just curious. It is a big step to make at that age, and like you said, you're already living away from home here in Germany, but then to do it where you're crossing the ocean, a 6 hour time change, then it becomes English as the main language, like, and you're 17 years old or whatever. Like it's a big job. And especially then, as you mentioned, like not so many people had done it. So it was still kind of unknown for a lot of Germans, where now, as you stated, like especially for the U20 team, if you're playing major junior, it's almost a guarantee that you're going to be picked for that team because you're playing that level, and they feel that that's a high junior level in North America.
Yeah, it was at that time I wasn't ready. Now I guess I would do it right away, but um, yeah, it's easier.
It's
It's easy
easy.
to say now.
It's easy to say now. We all have those. But you mentioned you end up making the choice there to turn pro, and you end up signing with the Ice Bear in Berlin there. I believe you were 19 years old your first year pro, and we've talked about this off camera, just kind of the system they had in place there. Like obviously you being a young goalie, and we all know, as me and you know, and I believe as young athletes, it's important to play games and develop. So Berlin had I believe, a nice system in place for you where you would play for their third league team as a young guy, get a lot of games in, and then obviously, whether it's practicing with the DL team or even coming up for games when they needed you, you would go up and down. But like, how was that first year adjustment for you? Because as I mentioned, you were just 19 years old and you're stepping into pro and playing a lot of games.
Actually, when I came to Berlin, I was still 17. Again, like when I went to Mannheim 3 weeks before I turned 15, I went to Berlin 3 weeks before I turned 18. Um, and, but anyways, if you're 18 or 19, it doesn't make a big difference. First of all, it was a big step from so so at first I lived at home, then I went to a place where I didn't have my parents around and I had to do a little bit stuff on my own, but still I lived in a house with 20 other guys from the team. which makes it easy, which is fun, which is cool, which is something you enjoy. And I guess as a 15, 16, 17-year-old, that's pretty cool to have. But then you move into an apartment, and then it's you and usually with young players, there's a second guy in there. So there was Christoph Gavlik, who came to Berlin with me from Mannheim. So at least we knew each other already. And of course, I knew other younger players from Berlin through the national teams, and some 85 borns from the national team as well when I played up to the next older national team. But everything else was pretty man dominated. Even though in Berlin we had a lot of young guys, because of the system they already had in place, as you mentioned. And there it was. I mean, I guess if you would use a white piece of paper and write down the ideal relationship between the first team and the farm team, that would have been the situation in Berlin, which is not really manageable nowadays because of the costs and the environment you need to have, and Berlin doesn't have it anymore either. But at that time, so I was sitting. My dressing room was the DL dressing room. I was skating with the DL team, and I was skating with the Oberliga team. That's the third league. And it didn't matter which team I skated with. I always went to the same dressing room. Now with farm teams, you have to go into the room, you have to pick up your stuff, you have to drive somewhere, or at least there's some more work that has to go into it. So that was perfect. And then I had days where at 6:30 in the morning the Oberliga team skated, because some of the guys still had school and some other guys went to work. So I went on the ice at 6:30, and then for an hour or 75 minutes. So I went off, had breakfast, went back to the rink, had the workout and the ice with the pro team. And we usually skated at 10:30. It was Pierre Paget was head coach at the time. 10:30 was his time to skate. 11 o'clock on the day after the game. It was basically set in stone. And then you had lunch, you went home, and then sometimes I went on the ice a third time again with the Oberliga team. Well, I remember days where I had the pregame skate Friday morning with the DL team. And then I skated with the Oberliga team at 5 p.m. for an hour, so until 6 p.m. And then we had to get off the ice because the DL game was coming up at 7:30, and the ice had to be ready. Maybe it was a little bit earlier, but 90 minutes before the game, at least the ice had to be ready, I think. So I went back to the DL dressing room where the players already got prepared and sometimes had a meeting for the DL game. So I took off the jersey for practice and just put on the game jersey and went back on the ice 15 minutes later for warm-up and sat on the bench that night. But I mean, as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, you don't. It sounds interesting, but for me, I mean, I love to play hockey. And for the development, I think it was great because it is pre-game skate, the 12 minutes you have sometimes. Not so intense practice. And then you sit on the bench during the night, and then yes, you can go in the gym afterwards and do something, but you didn't really practice the whole day on the ice. So with the Oberliga team, at least I got to practice for an hour, 75 minutes, and then it never happened that I had to go in during the game. So even if I would have, I mean, you're probably not tired yet. The adrenaline hits, and you're there. But then the next day you practice again, and then Sunday. In that case, on the Sunday, I would stay in Berlin because usually the pro team Friday at home, Sunday on the road, and then when we played at home with the pro team, the Oberliga team had to play on the road because there was no ice available. And then the Oberliga team played at home on Sunday, so I stayed in Berlin and played for them Sunday. So I got a game every week, sometimes two when they played Tuesday, or vice versa, that I go on the road with the pro team and on the road with the Oberliga team on the same weekend. Sometimes we did that because, of course, we had another young goalie who went through the same development kind of, which was Dania Chunusov at that time, who went on to have a pretty good career in the DL as well. So, and then we had Oliver Jonas as the number one goalie, who played the majority of the games in the first year. But yeah, it was a very good, cool first year for everything.
It sounds like, yeah, as you mentioned, they really had the system in place there, and unfortunately today it's really hard to duplicate that for multiple reasons, which you stated. Another cool thing for you would have been getting adjusted to pro hockey, is obviously coming in with an organization like Berlin, where they won a couple championships. I believe they won 2 in your first 3 years or 4 years there. Obviously, as a young goalie coming up, a young player, that's obviously another bonus to be around a culture there that understands winning, and you're kind of also learning from that culture to be like, yeah, this is how we win. I'm sure you were involved in some of the parties if you guys won championships, I would assume. I'm sure it was pretty crazy in a city like Berlin. Like, do you have any memories from just those early championships?
Yes, I do have memories, but
Ones that you can say on camera.
no, actually, of course, parties are parties usually as good as you make it, kind of. But interesting in Berlin was at that time we still played in the Wellblechpalast, so the old ring in Hohenschönhausen, which is the eastern part of the city, and the Berlin Capitals. I think I don't know if they were called Berlin Capitals or Preußen Berlin again. At that time, had a third league team, and that's the western part of the city, and the west. So that part at that time was still east and west in Berlin, kind of in some heads of from the people. So Eisbären Berlin were the team from the east. So in the eastern part, everybody went nuts and crazy, and we had like a what do you call the autocorso? Like the parade. Yeah, we had the parade, and not like in North America where everybody's on top of one bus. We had 25 different cabrios from our sponsor. So so 3 players in each car. So we went through the city of Berlin, and in West Berlin there was no one. But even got booed at 1 or 2 places because I guess they were Berlin Capitals or Preußen Berlin fans. And then the more we moved into the eastern part, we had more and more people on the side, and that sticks in my memory because it's not. Of course, the party there and the people went crazy. That tune was fun, and it was unbelievable to see. But on the other side, and at that time I didn't realize it as much as I do today. But where you could still see the difference, or how far apart the two sides were, in the heads of the people was interesting to see. And then when the years, like, I spent 5 years in Berlin where we won 4 championships, luckily. And after the third year, we moved over to, at that time it was called the O2 World, and and now Uber. So as soon as the rink was built, of course, the Eisbären, what they tried to do is that we are Berlin's team, of the whole city. And there you could really see, because then we won a second championship, and then we had a year which wasn't as good, where we lost in the pre-playoffs. But in the first year back in the arena, I think every game was sold out. And then even in the western parts of the city, when I went there, I remember times where people knocked on my window with the car and wanted an autograph because they started to recognize us. Of course, we have the advertisement on the car, but the years before, nobody was interested in. And then even when we went out for dinner. We went out on a night off. People started to know us, to recognize. So you could tell how much bigger the team or the organization grew um, inside the city. So that was, besides the cool parts we had on the sports side, that was interesting to see as well. That kind of found a connection or build a connection to more and more people there.
The sports team almost, and like when you guys went to the new rink, it almost kind of like brought both sides of the city together. Like, you know, there was,
Well, in hockey at least.
yeah, at least in hockey, obviously.
I don't want to say that we
maybe not in
city,
maybe not in politics, but
no, but and all the other parts. I mean, nowadays it's still. I mean, you can talk to Leon Gawanke. He knows it better than I do, I guess. But you still the two soccer teams with Hertha BSC and Union Berlin. Hertha is the western part, and Union Berlin is the eastern part. And I think they're still but they still have two teams which are pretty good.
Yeah. No, I believe it. I'll have to ask him if he ever.
But that's better to talk to Leon about it.
That'll be one of my questions. Another thing I want to ask you about, like at that young age, you know, you're in the Berlin organization winning those championships, as you mentioned, but you also, one thing I thought was really cool was, you know, you got to represent your country a couple times there early on. And both times you did, I believe you won. So the U18s, you guys won the D1B gold medal. And then the next year or 2 years later, you know, playing at the U20s and you guys win the D1A gold medal. So, and as it works in international hockey, especially in those tournaments, when you win, you get promoted. So you were part of two promotions for your country. Obviously, being a German citizen, like that must have meant a lot for you, like having those successful tournaments and being able to rise a level each time.
Yes. And that was great. And I still look back with and I'm happy about it. But on the other side, which I was a little bit sad because of the system. Of course, we got promoted in the under 18. Next year, we didn't play it. So the age group, like born 87s, they were able to play it, which was nice, and we were happy for them, and we were proud that we brought our country back up. But then the next year, I played the under 20 A pool in Grand Forks, but that was part of our team that got relegated as well. So that's to have the full story. So we got relegated there, and I think that makes it even. I'm more proud of bringing, like, go back the year later and go back up again, because you kind of feel you got relegated, and you of course you don't like it, but at least we were able to go back up the year after again. I think that makes the whole thing a little bit more, or makes me more proud than the under 18, which was great as well. But since I was able, or we were able to, can you say it, redo?
Yeah, you basically got a do-over of.
Yeah, you could correct your mistake, kind of thing.
No, and I think it's good too to kind of, as you said, you get to end on at least the U20s or the, what are you going to call it, the knockbooks of the national team. You get to end on a good note of winning, you know, winning your last game, winning that gold medal, and then obviously passing it on to the next age group and stuff like that.
But the one thing, the World Juniors in North Dakota was 2000, the season 2004, 2005 was lockout year. So we got relegated, which on the sport side, it's terrible. But on the other side, we shared the hotel there with the Russians. And that year, Ovechkin played on the team, Evgeny Malkin played on the team, which made it even bigger tournament for everybody. And Phil Kessel on Team USA, Sidney Crosby, Canada, Patrice Bergeron in Canada, Ryan Getzlaff in Canada. So I think from the Canadian team, 7 or 8 players went on to win a Stanley Cup within the next 4 or 5 years. So the whole tournament was packed. And I can't remember who it was, but I remember Florian Busch, who was on the team as well with us from Berlin, from the Iceman there too. He got into a conversation with some parents from, I guess, a player from Sweden. And then so the parents asked Bushi if he's here to play the hockey team, if he's a hockey player too. And he said yes. And then at some point he figured out who the son was. It's too bad I can't remember the name. But when Bushi heard that name, he said, "Okay, then I'm not a hockey player." So because it was even that Swedish team was packed with names, and the Finnish team, Tuukka Rask was a goalie for Finland, for example. It's El Montoya for USA. It was a pretty.
I think Pogge was the goalie for Canada. Or that might have been the year before, and then that year was Jeff Glass.
Jeff Glass was that. Pogge came the year later, I think.
Yeah.
Jeff Glass was the goalie there. Maybe it was the backup already. Pogge, that could be. But Justin Pogge, I saw again. I played against him and Team Canada in the Spengler Cup 2 years later. I think he played there. But it was, when you look at the names now, Nigel Dawes was on the Canadian team.
Those teams, those years, so the 2 years you would have had eligibility to play U20, like, or what most people are taking. Those Canada and US teams, it's a joke how stacked they were, especially Canada. Like the 1 year Sidney Crosby playing as a 17-year-old with a cage on and like the names he was with, and just like it's like.
Yeah, but that was the year.
Was that the year?
Was
that was 17 year.
Because I played as a underage player, kind of.
Yeah.
Was born the 85 borns. It was their tournament.
Yeah.
So me and Thomas Greiss as the goalies born 86 for Germany, and then Sidney Crosby born 87.
Right. Oh man.
It's Dion Phaneuf on the blue line.
Were they in your division? Was Canada in your division?
Yes. So we
who played net for that game?
For them or for us?
For you.
Well, I started, and then after 30 minutes we switched.
We agreed it was gonna be half and half before the game started.
I think so, yeah. It was 4-0 at the time. So
that's
5-0.
That's pretty good.
We lost 9-0, I guess. But for that game, we went to the Ralph Ingolstadt Arena there in, where is it?
Grand Forks.
Yeah. And so Solder Rink, great arena.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's amazing. But the other games we played in Thief River Falls. Smaller rink. So we played Finland, we played Sweden, and we played Slovakia. Those were the other 3 teams. Great tournament. Great memories, great names there.
I mean, it's probably just crazy to look back and you played against those guys, and like you said, how many of them won Stanley Cups in their career, if not in the first couple of years of their career in the NHL. It's pretty crazy. That's that, as I said, those age groups there for that tournament, like there's a debate of like what was the strongest draft, and I know one of those is like probably top 3 for sure of so many guys who got drafted and played 10 plus years.
It's gotta be, if you don't have to lock out Ovechkin, Malkin, Crosby. Crosby
would have been there because he wasn't drafted.
But Bergeron, Getzlaff, I don't think they would.
No, Perry, no.
So
I went
good and bad for us.
I went to the Memorial Cup that year, and it was in London, and Perry was back in London, which he shouldn't have been because of the lockout. And I remember it was London against Rimouski in the finals with Crosby. Fellow German passport now, Mario Scalzo was on Rimouski.
He played here as well.
Yeah. Trying to think who else. I feel like there was somebody else, but that team was stacked too. Like there was so many guys on those 2 teams. But back to your career. One other thing I found very cool for you early on was, I hope I had the year right. I believe when you were 21-ish, turning 21 or 21 turning 22, you were a starter for Berlin in the DL. Playing 41 games according to Elite Prospects. Hopefully that's correct.
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right. after kind of doing that, what we talked about before, like the double training, the up and down, the development phase, it must have been pretty gratifying for you to make it as a starter in the DL at such a young age, because there is that I don't know if it's a stereotype or if it's fact based. You can make an argument for both, where goalies normally take longer to kind of develop mature. So like for you to do that at such a young age must have been like a good achievement for you.
Yes, it was, of course, but uh, somehow, that was, of course, when you ask, yeah, that's what you work for. That's what you aim for, and um, I have to say, for me, um, I have to be thankful too for two, Pierre Paget and Peter Lee, who was the GM in Berlin at that time, that they tried to go that way, and that they trusted young players and young goalies. Otherwise, there were some of the guys who went on to have long DL careers. They wouldn't have been able to be in the league that early, I think, because at that time it wasn't that common.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we had to do a lot for it. It wasn't handed to us. It wasn't given to us. We had to still earn it. But first, there has to be the idea and the vision and the and the trust from the people who run the club and the team. So, luckily enough, Pete was there, Pierre was there, and then of course the rest was our job to be able to do it, to be in a position to um, bring the results. Um, and yeah, but of course now when you look back now, it's there's more gratitude to it, because at that point you think, okay, that's the next step. I have to get better, and to get to the next step, you don't really think about everything else. Um, but yeah, it was cool, but still, maybe I was too young, or we all the young guys were too young to really feel it, because I don't think we barely felt any pressure. Um, we had fun to play together. We had fun to play for the club, for the organization. It was, yeah, we went on the season journey with a bunch of friends and played hockey. That was, I mean, I know when Stefan Ustorf hears that today, he was one of the older guys already on the team, or Steve Walker or Dennis Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
They probably think a little bit different, because their responsibility and how you think about the sports and your career is a little bit different then. But I guess at the end of the day, that was the perfect mix, because you had the young guys there who didn't think too much of of the responsibilities and everything that comes with it, and then you had the older guys who told us more than once that we should concentrate now, should focus, or should at least work for the 90 minutes we're in the dressing room, and then we can make our jokes when we're off the ice again. So it kind of, but because it had both sides a little bit. For us to be a little bit more mature, and for them to, yeah, stay young, how you still say it now,
Yeah,
right?
no.
It's, and no, it's fun. So it's, especially nowadays when I see Usti or Walks, still, since they're still in the league. It's just cool. Yeah, it's good memories.
Always a learning curve, and it's funny too. I just think of those teams, like obviously we've talked about before. Like I knew Rob Zapp. I used to train with him, and he had a very good career in Berlin. But you just look at so many guys that were on those teams throughout the years, and how many of them stayed involved in hockey in Germany. I think, like obviously you mentioned Ustorf as one guy, Walker now, and Schwenningen there. Like just he was a long time in Munich. Like just good to see those guys, like they played over here, but then they also stayed and now are kind of giving back and getting into coaching or GMing, whatever it is. After Berlin, you end up going to the best logo ever. I love this logo because my best friend's dad played for them back when they were the Vetamark Scorpions, and he had a jersey in his house hanging there. And I used to ask him, "What team is that?" And he was like, "Oh, it's a German team I played for." So the Scorpions of Hanover, I believe they're in Hanover by the time you were there, but the logo itself, the scorpion with the little goalie mask on, I think that is probably one of the best logos. But how was your time transitioning there, going from Berlin to Hanover? Believe you played 2 years or 3 years? 2 years. And how was that transition for you, and just kind of like seeing, I guess at that point, seeing a different organization because you'd been so used to being in Berlin for all those years, and obviously when you were there too, you mentioned you won a couple championships in Berlin, so now you were opening a new door, starting a new journey in Hanover.
It was hard. The transition was way harder than I expected. Um, for I don't really know why, but I guess in Berlin, I was still when I got to Berlin, I was still young. I was still at one point, Pierre told me, "Hey, you're not a baby anymore. No, you're grown up here in Berlin." And I guess that's the point. When I came to Berlin, I was still a baby in the hockey world. Then I spent 5 years there. Saw something. We won some things. I played some games. Then I went to Hanover. Um, and you mentioned Rob Sepp here. And my last 2 years in Berlin, he was my goalie partner. He was the number one guy there in Berlin. So and then I went to Hanover to become full time number one goalie. That was the goal, and that was the goal from Hanover as well. And so there, I guess that was the first time I kind of felt pressure,
Mm.
and that wasn't good. And I was treated more as a full professional now, which was nice, yes. But on the other side, I wasn't quite ready to be more on my own, or be more on my own than I was used to from Berlin. In Berlin, there was still people who looked, yeah, kind of looked after you. That didn't took your hand like a baby, but at least it told you, hey, go to the gym, do this, do that. And in Hanover, like with the young guys they did in Berlin, they showed us the way. And in Hanover, they showed the young guys the way, but they treated me a little bit different because I already had 5 years of
Yeah.
experience in the league, and I don't want to blame them for that. That's why I try to find the words, even in English, especially in English. But for me, of course, that's a process as well, and at some point you have to go through it. But that's why I said the transition was hard. Otherwise, the city was great. The rink was great. The organization, the people that worked for Marco Stichenroth as the GM, Hans Zach as the coach, Christian Künast, who's now the sport director for the German Federation. He was the assistant coach that time.
Mm.
They're all people that care. They really and truly care. But um, at some point, I had to be on my own more, and that was in Hanover already, and that made it a little bit harder for me. The team itself, the teammates, I still can't find the right words for that.
Mm.
Team chemistry that was unbelievable. But for me, on the sports side, it it didn't go the way as I hoped to, or as I planned. Um, so in that first, I think it was the first year in Hanover. Yes, in the first year, I played for the other team as well, the other Hanover Indians in the second league.
Mm.
Played a lot of games there. I played the relegation round for them as well.
The Scorpions won that year, right?
The Scorpions won.
Yeah.
We signed Travis Scott at some point, that goalie.
Yeah.
He was a major reason we won. Um, Still interesting how he did it with the style here. It's amazing how, but yeah, it's a great goalie. Um, but but the time with the Indians was great as well. Not easy because I came from the team they hate,
Mm-hmm.
and so at the beginning they didn't like me that much. Even at one point I did so at the Pferdeturm, the rink there. when it sold out, it's 4,500 people that fit in. It was sold out. We played, I think it was Bremerhaven, because when you were the home goalie, the away fans were right behind you, and the whole section was full. So it must have been Bremerhaven. They still played in the second league that year, I think. Well, it must be some. I guess Bremerhaven doesn't matter in the end. But so it was a tight game. I think we were up 5-4 or something. So and they rimmed the puck in to put it deep. So I went out of my net. I stopped the puck, and I shot it back up in the glass. So and I hit it pretty good. But there was some forward jumping into the boards, and I hit him on the shoulder. And from the shoulder, the puck went in front of the net, and of course the second guy came and put the puck into the empty net. So it was 5-5. And then the whole rink, except for the guest fans, they started to shout the name of the second goalie. So, and I was there standing. So that was not a fun moment. We ended up winning the game in in shootout. But for some reason, after that game, something, not after that game, but over the course of the season, then and to the end of the season, the connection between me and the fans there, that was better, and it was good at the end, and at some point they shouted my name too. So, but the moment wasn't that easy. So the whole year was, yeah, fun and not as much fun, but on the other side, I good for the experience I made. And then the second year in Hanover, I played more. I stayed with the DL team. Guess I played one game for the
Braves.
Oberliga game there, because I think I was hurt. Yeah, I was hurt, and I came back. That was the first game, just to get into a game. And then we had Tyler Moss there as a goalie who came. Yeah, exactly, because at the beginning of the season, Travis Scott was the goalie, and we had some financial trouble there. And then he signed with some other team. I think he went back to the KHL.
Yeah, I remember.
And then I got hurt, and I was out 6 weeks, and then we signed Tyler Moss to be the other goalie, and then but he got hurt at some point. So I played some games there in the end. It was I played solid enough that I was able to sign with Cologne for the year after. But the 2 years in Hanover, even though on the sports side it wasn't that good on a personal note, we still won as a team, which is usually more important. And the experience I made were good. Now, during the time was not so much fun.
For all the fans out there listening to this, no matter how bad it gets for your home goalie, please do not chant the other goalie's name. I experienced that in Heilbronn my second year when I struggled at the start, and I have to say that is probably one of the worst feelings you can have, because you already feel alone enough in your net when things aren't going well, and to have your own fans, obviously they expect things of you and you expect things of yourself as well, but to have them kind of turn on you a bit, and especially for like, at least for myself too, being in an unknown country for the second year, it really hit me hard. So I can understand, I can relate to you when you're talking about that. It's never easy. I don't mean to skip over Cologne, because obviously you were there for 3 years, but I wanted to get to the obviously where we are now, the Adler Mannheim. You came to Mannheim on the pro side there in the 14-15 season. You guys end up winning a championship that year, which would be your sixth championship, I believe, to that point in your playing career. One thing I like to kind of talk to you about is, you're someone that, even now being on the other side of playing, like I consider you like a Mannheimer, like someone who bleeds the blue, white, and red. I hope I said the colors in the right order there, but you do a lot for the community now too. Obviously, you're very connected there with the hospitals, with Rosie's kids. Any kind of charity event, any public appearance that you're able to go to, it seems like you have always be a guy that's willing to go. Just kind of talk about like your last couple of years there playing, and then also like what the city meant to you.
Well, interesting. My connection my connection to Mannheim or to the organization goes back to, I guess it's 97 or 98. I think 97, not so much. I didn't realize that at the time. But when Mike Rosati was a goalie for Mannheim, it was 97, 98. And at that time, I started to watch DEL games on TV at home. And I just liked Mike Rosati. So because like I liked Mike Richter and like the Rangers, now I liked Mike Rosati and I was a Mannheim fan.
Mm.
Um, and I remember I think Markus Kuhl, yeah, must have been Markus Kuhl was a manager at that time. And my dad worked for a TV company who produced the games, the hockey games at that time. Um, so I guess Marcus, must have been Marcus, who sent my dad a Mannheim jersey with the number 1 on it and my name underneath. So that was my first DL jersey I got. So so since then I was always I don't say rooting for the Adler because that's I think you can say that, but I was following them because of Rosati, and then of course I went to the Young Adler, got a bigger connection. And when you spend your time in a city when you're 15, 16, 17, that's a time because there's some changes you go through with yourself. You grow up more. You find some friends through school, through the hockey part, and then it wasn't at that time, but that was um, my third year in Berlin. I started dating my now wife. She's from Mannheim, so there was always the connection back to Mannheim, um, and somehow even when we were on the road with the other teams, and Mannheim was always a special place for me to go to because I had a deeper connection to that city because of my time there. And then when the opportunity came and Mannheim asked if there would be if I would be interested in thinking about playing for Mannheim, for me it was a yeah, even 1 minute I guess was too much to think about. I mean, for me it was crystal clear. I was a free agent at the time, so I said yes, of course. I wanna play for you. Um, and then somehow you mentioned Rosie's kids. You mentioned the other things. It's just I like to do it, and every time you do something like that, and you see the joy and how thankful the people or the kids are when you're there and you spend your time and you just talk to them and yeah, just be there. It's that's something that makes them happy, but it makes me happy to see that they have a good time. So I like to do it, and obviously with our club, we have such a great chance to use the name and to use the network um, to help other people who are in need because of some circumstances you cannot really control. Um, um, I think we should use it, and everybody, and at least 95% of the people you talk to or you go to, and they all agree to it, and that we need to help and that they want to help too. That that's it's a good feeling. It's nice to hear, but most important thing is that the people and the kids have a good time, and especially with the kids. That's probably the Rose Kids Corner. That's probably the organization I'm the most involved
Mm.
in the daily parts. Um, when you see those kids, it's amazing. I mean, they're so sick with cancer.
Mm.
But they have the time of their lives. They have the best time. They're funny. They have fun. They giggle around. They jump around. They 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 actually they show us how to go through your day and every day and live life in the present, not in the past or in the future, but here and now.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's just yeah, it's just fun to talk to them, to communicate with them. Um, yeah, and to take them away from the trouble they have some other some other hours of their life.
Like you said, though, you would never know talking to them. They're always so happy whenever I see them at the games, always smile on their face, always wearing their jerseys. Obviously, in the year that I've been here, I know every year we do a couple, whether it's signing sessions with them, get togethers, and no fear whatsoever. Some of them will grab the mic, talk, just so happy to be there. They make us gifts. You're wearing one of the bracelets we got last year. Like, it's, as you said, they live in the moment. And, sometimes for us, I would say normal people out there, like when we're stressed about something that we shouldn't be stressed about, like they're just having the time of their lives. It kind of reminds you like what's important and puts it into perspective. Um, One other thing I want to talk to you about. You end up playing your last 3 years of pro hockey here in Mannheim. I believe you retired at the age of 31. Still very young, not and especially as we mentioned as goalies, I think a 31-year-old goalie is probably a 25-year-old player,
Mm.
whatever, just in terms of maturity and stuff. What was the ultimate reason, I would say, for you retiring? And you obviously transitioned to Mannheim in an office role first as team manager there. Like, how was that adjustment for you? Because so many people in life, I feel, um, you can only tell them so much, like what to prepare for, how it is when you're done playing hockey. But it's obviously everyone's experience is a little different. How you get through it, because it obviously is different. Not being every day, as you mentioned, in the locker room with the boys on the bus, all the stuff that you end up missing that you don't realize you'll miss too much until after. So how was the transition for you into the team manager role?
Mm. It's um it's hard to describe. Um, but at first, of course, I mean, when the opportunity came up, first I was excited and I said yes right away. That I would love to do it, and then different role, different approach. Um, and I guess that, of course, you mentioned not being with the guys in the locker room, not being with the guys on the bus. Yeah, that's what you miss, and and you kind of lose your um friendships
Mm-hmm.
around the work. Even though if it might not be the your best friend sitting next to you on the bus, but there's some kind of, like, let's call it hockey friends, and like every when you go to a new team in a new city, you don't have to worry about connections
Mm-hmm.
because you go to the dressing room, you have 25 people there right away. Um, when you go to a different city and a different job, normal job, you have to find new people for your private life. In the hockey, it's kind of given to you, kind
Yeah.
of given to you. So that I mean, you keep some of them as friends, but of course not all of them. And then you come back in a different role. There's the connection between you and the player. Then it's not the same as it was when you were player and player.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit they look at you a little bit different. Um, they listen to your words a little bit more carefully, I guess. Um, so there's a transition for the guys you played with, and there's a transition for you, of course, which which took a while. It wasn't done for me in a week or not even a year. Still it's still a process. I think for here the process is done now, but it's one of the reasons is that with Matthias Plachter, I think that's the only guy left I played with. Last year we still had David Wolf and Dennis Roy, for example. I played with them, but with them last year it's different. They were one of the captain and assistant captain and the experienced guys, and that was easy. It was easy with them, but over like the first 2-3 years, there was still I had to find my way how to do things and how to say stuff. Of course, they had to find a way to accept a new role.
Yeah.
So for everybody, it's a little bit of a transition. And everything else, it's of course it's still hockey, and it's still the hockey life, but it's different schedule. Which is a transition for yourself, but it's also a transition for your family at home. Which is a process. I guess some people might do the process in 2 weeks. Some might take a little bit longer, but for me, the hours were never the issue. Was more to get into a solid rhythm for every day for myself and plus the family at home. But I guess that could also be that it's for everybody who has kids. There's a everyday challenge to get into a rhythm, because the more kids you add or the more hobbies the kids add, you always have to fix and tweak the schedule. So that's still work to do for me there.
It's not your schedule anymore.
No, it's different people, and then somebody's sick or sometimes you're the Uber driver for 4 hours every afternoon for 3 kids, and then or somebody else picks up your kids, but this person gets sick, so you have to do it. That's more of the transition with the job then, but it's, like I said, it's and I'm what I said about the friendships, kind of, or the people you do something in your private life. Usually, when you play on a hockey team, first ideas I call that player ABC. Now to find, for me actually was to find like a social life outside of the rink. To my like more and more, that was new for me. It was a transition I had to go through, and the other transition, and I'm still in the middle of it. I don't know if I will ever get out of it, but to be used to have a schedule for the whole day. I had a schedule for every day for 25 years, kind of for 20 years. Let's say I had one since I joined the Young Adler when I was 15, almost 15, until I was 31. So 16 years. I checked the schedule for the next day and was there, okay, there's breakfast, there's practice, there's school, there's this. And if you're not on time, the bus leaves, the practice starts, whatever, you're late, the food is gone, whatsoever. Now, getting adjusted to people that never had a schedule like that and work together with them and figure out a time or do, because for me, I still think and when I say, for example, if I would tell you tomorrow I pick you up, we go to the rink, pick you up at 10:10. Then I'm there at probably 10:08 and I leave at 10:10. You probably would be there because you're a hockey person and you live by a schedule too. But people outside of the professional sports, I would guess, they might show up at 10:12.
Yeah.
And still think, it's only 2 minutes. It's not a big deal, but for me, it's still in my head. I have to realize it. It's okay. It's not that that big of a deal, and I don't have to be on time because I get nervous when I sometimes I plan to be like when I pick you up at 10:10, I would be there at 10:05 for myself.
It's better to be
That's my
early than
plan.
late.
But when I show up at 10:07, I'm already nervous.
Uh,
But I'm not, even though I'm not late, and that's I guess still the um that's like my work life with the schedule is good, and I like to schedule my days, and for me it's good to do, but it's there the transition to have it in my private life and on the weekends or on days off that I don't live after a schedule, I think would help me a little bit. But this I'm still in the transition. I don't know if I get out of it, but all the other things that come with the job, and it's more a little bit like it's learning by doing a lot because there is no book I can read in, and it tells okay, you have to do this and you have to learn this, and that this is how it goes. I mean, yes, we can talk to each other about stuff, and we can talk to the other people in the office, but then sometimes it's a little bit try and fail. Um, yeah, just get into your own rhythm and ideas, and you follow those ideas what you want to do without somebody there telling you what to do, and that's um, but then having the responsibility for the stuff as well. On the other side, goalies usually used to have um, responsibility and to be there for other people.
Smartest guys in the dressing room normally.
Yeah, but actually, I played with some like Ole Jonas or even Marcus Fleming, who's a sports psychologist now. Ole Jonas is a doctor or professor in physics.
Feezer.
Michi Wieser, yeah, it's there's some smart goalies out
Just proves we're the smartest.
there. Some of them. No, but yeah, it's a little bit of a different life. It's a different and it's a different approach and how you communicate to other people. I mean, when you communicate to a team in a dressing room, that's dressing room like
Yeah.
it's more direct. It's more you can say when somebody walks in the morning, you can ask, "Did you pick out your clothes in the dark this morning?" And everybody laughs, and this guy laughs, and I say, "Joke is done and good." If you would do that in the office with some people that haven't seen a dressing room from the inside, I don't know if that works that well. That's so, but that's also an interesting part, and to learn to learn to learn about the people and to learn about different backgrounds, because the hockey background is one thing, and we all grew up through hockey, but the other people we work with now who haven't played hockey grew up through other things, and so that makes it interesting every day to learn from them and to hear their opinion and to hear how they see and how they would approach things. But to be able to use those informations to get your job done better in a better way, that's a transition too, I guess. But still, it's interesting and it's fun to do.
I would say the biggest thing for me, the two biggest things that I noticed right away is with adjusting is the first is, we obviously as athletes, we're competitive and we still have that competitive fire. And my situation where being an import, there's not many goalies, like I would still practice with the top team and do well and like have that competitive fire where I'm like, yeah, if I wanted to, I could still do this kind of thing. And then the second part is kind of what you mentioned is just with the scheduling. Like it's so funny. Like I'm a big video game guy. Like I like playing video games with my friends. So many times I'll get text at 12:30. Hey man, we're hopping. Can you come on and play with us? And I'm just like, no, I'm at the office. Like I'm working. And it's just like no matter how many times you tell them, they just like don't like just the athlete mindset, right? Like go to practice, get home, have lunch, and you have the rest of the day to do whatever. And for me, it's like, I get home most days, like an early day for me would be to get home at 3 after driving an hour. And it's like, you just laugh because like, or like, it's a game day and so mess. You'd be like, hey, we're gonna hop in the morning here after morning skate you in. I'm like, no, I'm in Mannheim. We're on a bus to Straubing. Like it's just like that funny stuff. That's really makes you realize like, yeah, you're on the other side now. You're in the working world. But we've been buzzing here. A lot of in-depth chats. I got 3 more questions for you, and then we'll call it a day. Because as I mentioned, you are my boss, which means you probably have work to do, unlike myself.
Delegated for you.
I'm gonna get a pass off here when we get off camera. Hey, Andrew, take care of this for me. Um, One thing I wanted to talk to you about, and I really don't mean this a question to come off in a negative way, but you've won 7 championships in your career so far, 6 as a player and 1 as a team manager in the office world, whatever you want to call it, on the working side of the team. One thing that was kind of you had to go through a lot in your career, and you kind of touched on it earlier, was kind of being in that 1B role. I really wanted to kind of get your opinion on like how you went through it and just like mentally, stayed positive because it is like, as I mentioned, we are all competitors as a goalie. Unfortunately, there's only one that plays. It's not like forwards where there's 12 that dress a game and stuff like that. The net's only big enough for one guy, and be, as a backup goalie or a 1B goalie, one of your biggest roles is to obviously work your ass off in practice and also be a positive guy in the room. So I'm just curious, like, how you were able to stay kind of positive and, how you approach day to day, like throughout your career.
Well, of course, at the beginning, it was a little bit tougher to do that because when you're younger, I mean, when I was 18, 19 in Berlin, I knew I was the young goalie. I had to learn. I was happy to have the opportunity to be with the DL team and be able to play in the farm team. So I went there to learn every day, and then the third year I was the number 1 guy, and I played, and then um, so and afterwards it kind of started with the backup 1B role. I would say, of course, at the beginning it was tough, because you think that that something was taken away from you. It was a process for me as well. Um, but then I guess with the time in Hanover, and then when I signed for Cologne there, when I went to Cologne, it was 2011. So I was still 24 when I went to Cologne, so still pretty young as a goalie, but already 7 years in the league. Um, uh, so for me there, I was old enough or matured enough to accept the role that I signed as the 1B guy in Cologne with Danny Austenbirken as the number 1 guy. And then and there it helped me because Uwe Krupp, who was the coach there, he implemented and he didn't implement the system, but he was very open in communicating his goalie rotating system. So he came up to us and told at the beginning. So I still remember before the first DL game there in the first season, he said, Danny, Youri, come here. Danny, you play the first 2 games. Third game, Youri, you're in net, no matter what happens. And that's what he did, and that how he did it the next 3 years. He always came up basically every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks. He talked to us and told us, okay, Danny, those are your games. Youri, those are your games. And even though Danny played more games, but at least I played every third game.
Yeah.
So, and for me, that was something, okay, I know I'm in there and I know I'm not in the net for that game. So my practice schedule was it, changed to that kind of. So I had more time in the gym because I knew, okay, don't play tomorrow night. I spent more time on the ice, which you usually do with the goalie coach. the day before a game, after the head coach told the goalies, okay, who's in tomorrow or not. But then we already were able to do it during the week because we knew that's the plan. Okay, if somebody gets sick and the plan changes, if that happens once or twice, now you're old enough to play through it.
Yeah.
To be mentally ready to still play the game. But that helped a lot because sometimes I guess at least for me, and I'm pretty sure for some for some or maybe even a lot of backup goalies, and that goes back to being like a human being and having feelings as well. When you because the one year in Berlin, I remember that the coach came up to me and said, "Hey, the other guy plays tomorrow." Okay, so in the next game, day before, the coach comes, okay, the other guy plays tomorrow. At some point, you might get the feeling that you're not really part of the whole thing, even though you're part of it, but because you get rejected, because you hope for and you train for, and then somebody tells you no, that you get rejected, basically, and then at some point that can get hard. But the way Uwe did it, you know, okay, that's the job. I have to be ready for that game, and the other games that's my job, but you still feel part of it, and you know exactly what's in for you, basically. So that mentally it was pretty cool, to have that. And even though if Danny or myself had a shot at the game, the next game the plan was the same. And I guess that helped both of us because and I think the numbers showed the 3 years, mostly the 3 years in Cologne. I struggled in the second year a little bit, but in the first year, especially at the beginning, and in the third year, I think the goalie numbers in Cologne were the best in the league, kind of, or within the best numbers of in the league. But being a backup, it's not it's not easy. And like what I mentioned, if like when a coach always tells you you're not in there, and you don't have a plan or you don't see the bigger picture, it makes it harder. The way Uwe did it, and that's the same way Jeff Ward did it in the first year in Mannheim. Same thing. He came up, said, "Dennis, you play that game, so those games you have those games," and then that was it. And there was no discussion about it, and he stuck to it. That makes it easier, especially when you have goalies that are a little bit older. I don't think with 18, 19 years old, it depends on the on the person. Maybe that doesn't work because they're too nervous before 3 days before a game, or I don't know. That the approach could be a little bit different, but of course, but and at some point I realized, hey, and for me now when I look back at my career, of course, when you sit there, you say, hey, I played every year I played 50 games. And yes, I'm pretty sure it's cool to say, hey, I won the championship being the number one guy. Yes. Yeah, I'm sure that's cool, and I can't imagine how your feelings about would be, but at the end of the day, and that was always the way I approached the sport. It's you sign with a team, and you play as a team, and everybody has to work together, and everybody needs to fill their role or succeed in their role to be able to win a championship in the end. And sometimes that's nowadays when I think about teams. When you think about goalies, sometimes I think, okay, when you sign your goalies, maybe let's talk about, or even with forwards and defensemen. Should you sign players that are the best at their position, really, or should you sign players that won in a certain position with a different team and and see if that player could be in the role again in your team if you have that open spot, because they know how to win while they're in that position. So for me, being a backup goalie and I won some championships, and somebody like myself would be on the market and we would look for a backup goalie. Okay, should we sign somebody who can really challenge the number one guy? That can be something you can go and do, or should we sign somebody who won in that position and he knows how to handle everything that comes with it, even a long playoff run, because he went through it, and if he's willing to accept that role again, there would be a discussion at the end, but sometimes, I mean, of course, you always talk about those role players, which makes it, yeah, that's something as a backup. I said, okay, that's my job now, and I'm pretty good in that role. So I can go but I could go somewhere else, maybe to a smaller team and be the number one guy, or I can be with bigger teams and have a chance at winning the championship. And now I would always pick the team where I have the chance to win a championship, because I still do like the career I had. I mean, I was part of six championship teams, and not once did I get the feeling that the team doesn't see me as a champion, or as not being part of the whole thing, but no, as the team you win together. And of course, you have your star players and your number one goalie. But for me nowadays, I mean, no, people nowadays, people like you now, they ask about the six championships, not about how many minutes I played, and it's about the memories and how the season was and how the feelings about it were. But so, it's just you want together, yeah, in a smaller role, but even the smaller roles are very important to win a trophy in the end.
No, it's building a puzzle and having the right pieces. That was the one thing we didn't touch on it before because we kind of got sidetracked, but that's one thing I was going to say to you is throughout your whole career, you only played for top teams. You played for Berlin, you played for Mannheim, you played for Cologne, and you played for Hanover, and they won. Like all these teams were higher end teams in the DL. And kind of just to your point, what you mentioned is, maybe these teams knew and you realized yourself that you were fine being in the role you're in because it had success in the past. You kept having success doing it. So like there's nothing wrong with that. And you, like you mentioned, you could have went to a lower team and been the number one goalie. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, winning championships is fun. I liked what you guys did in Cologne. It kind of reminded me of what we did in Garmisch. Like it was kind of a similar thing of a goalie would never play more than 3 games in a row. So if you won, you automatically stayed in the net. And if you lost but let in 3 goals or less, you would automatically stay in. But you could only play 3 in a row. So you knew in the DL2, there's rarely any weekday games. So it's Friday, Sunday, Friday, Sunday. So both goalies would have games within four games. So it was kind of similar there. And I think that's a good way to do it, especially when you have 2 capable goalies. 2 more questions for you. So you are now the assistant, the referent or Geschäftsführer, whatever it is in German. I can't remember it off the top of my head. Anyways, assistant GM. I'm just going to say that in English. Obviously, Matthias Bender is our Geschäftsführer, general manager, and you are his right-hand man. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
Hopefully here. And everything else, let's see where it goes. I mean, I go back to my start before I even skated. I mean, when we talk about the one appointment I had with the doctor, he told me told my mother it would be good for his son if he would go on the ice and skate for his hip muscles. And from there on, that was something I couldn't see coming. Then the goalie thing was something I couldn't see coming. And then, my playing career, yes, at some point I had the dream of being a professional goalie. And at some point, it was my goal to be a professional goalie, and it worked out pretty good. And then now after I retired, and then I think 9 months later, the opportunity here came up, which I haven't thought about really before. Um, there was a little bit of luck for me too. And then the way things developed here, of course, I have goals in my mind, in my head, and but at the moment, I think at the moment, I'm in the right position. And that's actually what I believe too, that when the life is, when life is, life knows when it's the right time for the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow when I look at that sense, I don't know if that's the right wording in English, but in German we have um, something similar there. And when I look back now at my careers, um, it's kind of true. It's kind of true, but of course you need to be ready. Or ready, I don't know if you're ever ready for anything, but at least prepared to take the next step, or have something in your head you want to do. But at the moment, I'm happy where I am. It's still enough to do, still enough to achieve here. Then yeah, let's see where it goes. And even when you look at the team in the office here, there's so many younger people who can stay here decades if they want to. And Matthias Binder, he's still has 10 years, easily 10 years before he has to retire or needs to retire whatsoever. So let's see, 5, 6, 7 years, maybe we're still the same team here, and you never know where it goes. And that's of course, like I said, I have goals in my head, but at the moment it's good where I am, and let's see what happens.
Definitely a great place to be, a great organization to be into. And yeah, I feel the same as you do in terms of, for yourself, like there's no pressure to want to move up or do something else. Like you seem very happy doing what you're doing. And I think when things are meant to happen, whether it's in the job or career or even buying a house, like when it's supposed to happen, everything kind of lines up, like the stars line up, whatever you want to call it, and door opens. So
I mean,
very,
I still have 3 kids at home.
yeah.
So there's some other stuff I have to deal with. So so like I said, at the moment, and for the point I am at in my life, working wise, and how old the kids are, at least for now, it's okay.
All right, last one for you here. I always ask my guests here. It's a good one to end on. Everyone always gives their own opinion, advice, so it's perfect. What is one piece of advice or multiple pieces of advice, if you have them, that you would give the younger generation? So if you're speaking to the young athletes out there, whether they're 14, 15, 16 years old, what is one piece of advice or multiple pieces of advice you would give them?
Well, one advice would be, but that's an advice I only give basically watching from the outside, because luckily from me, I didn't have to deal with it when I was growing up. Don't spend too much time on social media believing everything what's on there. I mean, on one side, there's a lot of good stuff in terms of how you can practice on your own, how you can um, go about your nutrition, how you can sleep. There's good stuff to follow, but I guess for every good thing, there's at least 2 or 3 bad things on there, which just um, plays with your mind a little bit. That's would be an advice I would give, even though I didn't have to go through the social media stuff when I grew up, luckily enough. The other thing that's more like a sentence I usually tell myself sometimes too, when I think something is not going right, or when I think something is unfair, or the steps I want to take are not there fast enough, or when I beat myself up again because I made a mistake somewhere. It's usually trust yourself, because you're usually on a better path than you think you are. And that's something I live by, because that's of course when you would look at yourself from the outside, hopefully at least people, or you would see a person who does a good job, or you would at least see all the good things that person does every day in every situation. And when you look at yourself, sometimes you look
we're often the biggest critic of ourselves.
That's the thing. You have the tendency to look at the 20%, or maybe only 10% that are negative, and you forget about the other 80 or 90%, which are more important in that moment. I would say, not that the 10% negative stuff is not important, but of course you can learn from it and do it better. But don't forget the big picture. That's why I said don't trust in yourself enough. You're usually on a better path than you think you are, and don't rush things.
No, it's very true. My dad has often told me that, especially the rushing things, and that's also been something I've on this podcast. A lot of guests have stressed, and I've stressed too to the younger listeners is, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. A lot of times in our business, you often see a lot of young athletes who are just so determined to get to the highest level they can before mastering the one they're at, or whether it's, hey, I'd rather go play in the DL, and I know I'll only play 3 minutes, or I could play U20 and play 20 minutes a night, but the DL is DL kind of thing. Like there's many scenarios like that, where at the end of the day, it's, as you said, don't rush yourself. And also I always tell people, enjoy the ride, because you wish so much to get to the next level, to get to the end of the road, whatever, and then you look back and realize you didn't enjoy the rise, the path as much as you probably should have, and then you're done. Guys like us who are done now, and there's definitely, we both have stated there's things we wish we did differently in our career or enjoyed more, because it's, you don't know what you have until it's gone. That's a very classic saying. But listen, Youri, I appreciate you doing this. Obviously, I think we're almost 2 hours here. This was a long one.
Let's go back to work now.
Yeah, we got to get back to work now. I appreciate you doing this. Appreciate you sharing your story, everything you learned along the way. As I said, you have 7 championships to date right now. Not bad. I enjoy working with you weekly here. You've obviously taught me a lot about this role since I've stepped into it about a year ago, and yeah, we're both part of the Mannheim family, and hopefully this is a successful season for us. But yeah, again, appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Andrew. A successful season is up to us.
Yeah,
I guess
it's all
a little bit too.
Yeah, for those listening, if you haven't already, give us a follow on YouTube there. You can check us out on any streaming platform, Spotify, Apple Music, you name it. Hopefully this week there's a few more Adler fans. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully the German subtitles work. Hopefully to have you guys along for the rest of the way. Throughout the year, I'll try to get more Adler players on, and maybe other athletes throughout the league and throughout Europe. So appreciate everyone listening. Until next week, cheers and ciao.